Hi BookTube, it's nearly the end of July, so time to do an August TBR, and I'm going to try and do with this as a kind of quite a brisk and breezy one. Now, August brings yet another BookTube event that I really enjoy, but a less structured one, because August is Women in Translation Month. And you know how I like reading books in translation and how I like reading books by women. So, you know, it's the month for me, isn't it? What am I going to read that isn't women in translation? Well, the other thing that I'm taking part in is Faulkner in August, or it's been Summer of Snopes, the Snopes trilogy this year. And it's the third month of that. It's The Mansion by William Faulkner, the third in the Snopes trilogy. I've also got a couple of kind of long projects on the go, Canterbury Tales and The Fairy Queen, but putting those to one side. I'm hoping that apart from that, everything I read this month will be Women in Translation Month stuff. But if I get picked to be a judge for the finals of the BookTube Prize, I'll have to I'll get to read slightly fewer of these, and I'll need to read those books, and fingers crossed some of them will be by women, and I'll be able to read those in August and save the others for September. We'll see how it works out. So there's a little bit of a pile of possibilities element about some of this TBR, because in case I've got BookTube Prize ones to read. Okay, come on, Rose, get on with it. What are you actually going to read? Well, first up, I'm really looking forward to reading Elena Knows by Claudia Pineiro, translated by Francis Riddle. There we go. And I'm so looking forward to this because I feel like everybody and his or her auntie on BookTube have been telling me how brilliant this book is over the last sort of month or so. So, yeah, right up there. And I'm also hoping to buddy read it with Katya, which will add another dimension of pleasure. Second up is a book that I'm reading for the LGBTQ Books in Translation book group, which is organised by Jen the librarian, and dear, wonderful Jen selected a book for August that fits with Women in Translation. It's The Queens of Sarmiento Park by Camila Sosa Villada, and translated by Maude. And it sounds really interesting and different. I'll report back on that one. But if you're interested in joining the group, it's anyone can join. There's a Discord group. I'll put some details below, because it's a great way of discovering new work in new books new to you in translation by LGBT authors. So those two are definites. And apart from that, it's books that I've actually got physical copies of. Oh no, there's one more that I don't have a physical copy of, but which I think is pretty high on my definite list, and that is a book from the Ukraine. And the reason is because Tilly's doing a bit of a reading things from Ukraine sort of thing, and I thought it would be nice to read one of the books that she's also reading, and that's Fieldwork in Ukrainian Sex. Great title. The author is Oksana Zabuzhko. She wrote it in 1996, but it was translated by Halyna Hryn from the Ukrainian in 2011, and it's spoken of as being one of the most sort of notable books written in Ukrainian since Ukrainian independence, or in the first years of Ukrainian independence. So sounds like a good one, doesn't it? One that I should read. So what else? Now, this is a book that I feel like everyone on BookTube read a few years ago, everyone in the world read a few years ago, except for me, and I'd like to catch up with it. And that's The Vegetarian by Han Kang. So Korean book, translated from the Korean by Deborah Smith. I'm not going to talk about it because I feel like, well, it's a modern classic and of Korean literature, and it feels like a gap in my reading not to have read it. So I hope to get to that one. Another book that I've meant to read for a while, and I'm looking forward to, is this one, Season of the Shadow by Leonora Miano, translated by Gila Walker. I think it's translated from the French, I suspect. Miano is from Cameroon, so it could have been written in Cameroonian, but I think I think she wrote it in French. Now, it's historical fiction. You know, she goes back to the early days of the transatlantic slave trade and is sort of writing about that, but from a sort of, again, a fresh perspective. I've read books from Cameroon before, but not by a woman, so that's pretty definite. That's in my pretty definite pile. Another one that is in my most definite pile is this one, and that's The Artificial Silk Girl by Irmgard Keun. Now, this time last year for Women in Translation Month, I read Gilgi One of Us by Keun, and I've been meaning to read another book by her ever since. Isn't that a great cover? I love that. It's brilliant, isn't it? Because this is not a contemporary book. She was writing basically in sort of Weimar Berlin, and I loved Gilgi, and it was about the kind of the new woman in Germany in the 1930s, and then of course, you know, fascism comes along and screws all that. Yeah, looking forward to this one. If possible, I'd like to persuade Zena of Beating Around the Books to read it with me, but I haven't asked her yet. Yeah, I'll do that after I make this video. Now then, we're going to head to France next, and this one is, again, I think, a definite, and it's so short, there's no excuse for not fitting this in, isn't it? And it's a book, another older book that I feel that I really should have read, and that's Bonjour Tristesse by Françoise Sagan, and translated by Irene Ashe, and it came out, now when was this originally published in France? 1954. There you go. So, and why do I feel I should have read it? It was one of those groundbreaking books that was part of that sort of the shift in sort of French society towards, I don't know, changing values, bringing in the 1960s, more permissive era. You know, it's set on the French Riviera. I'm looking forward to it. I may, if I can, fit in another French book. This is a more recent one. It's Pétronille by Amélie Nothomb, translated from the French by Alison Anderson, and it came out, she wrote it or published it in 2014, and then it was translated 2015, so relatively new book. Fascinating novel about friendship between two women. I, for the BookTube Prize, read an older book about friendship between two women, Inseparable by Simone de Beauvoir, and I felt like this would be an interesting follow-up. I gather she's also a really good sort of prose stylist. We'll see. Then I'm planning, if I fit all this in, you know, but they're none of these very long books, so I'm optimistic. Okay, so I want to read a book from Brazil. I may be rereading a Clarice Lispector with there's a little mini group of Lispector fans who kind of read her books together, and we had a new member join that group, Fraser Simons. The others are Alan of Big Card Books and Classics and Una of Codex Cantina, and Fraser needs to read a couple of the books that we read earlier before he joined us, and I said I'll join that for a reread, because Lispector really she justifies rereading her books. You know, you get more out of them second time around. If that doesn't happen, or if I can manage both, the other Brazilian women writer that I'm hoping to read is one that I haven't read before, and that's Marilyna Felinto, and she was one of a sort of new wave of Brazilian writers. So Lispector is sort of very well known, but she's a sort of new wave writer. The books, The Women of Tijucapapo. It's translated by Irene Matthews. It was originally published in, let's get this right. Oh, I can't see. 1982. There we go. So it's sort of like backlist, but you know, more recent than Inspector. I have high hopes of getting to all the things that I've described here. If you want to particularly press me to read one of these, other than Elena Knows, which, you know, I know, I've heard, everybody says, yeah, I've got it, then do. And if you've just read one of them and want to tell me what you thought about it, I would love to hear. But also, if you're also reading things for Women in Translation Month that have other ideas and books you want to talk about in the comments, that would be really lovely. Happy reading in August, everyone, especially if you're reading Women in Translation.